In the winter of 1991, long after the fall of a brutal regime, workers entered an abandoned orphanage in western Romania and found something they would never forget. The building stood at the edge of the small village of Cighid, near the Hungarian border. It was gray, silent, and half-frozen in the January fog. The windows were broken. Paint peeled from the concrete walls like shedding skin. The iron gate creaked in the wind. Locals had avoided the place for years. They said that at night, when the air turned still and the fields were covered in frost, screams came from inside the empty structure. Not the playful shouts of children, not the sound of animals, but long, strained cries that seemed to drag against the walls. According to county records, the Cighid orphanage had once housed over 100 disabled and unwanted children during the final years of Nicolae Ceaușescu's rule. After the revolution of 1989, foreign journalists exposed the conditions: malnutrition, neglect, isolation. Many children were transferred. Some died. The building was eventually shut down. But what followed closure was never written in official documents. It began with a caretaker named Mihai Popescu. Mihai was assigned to guard the property until it could be sold or demolished. He was a practical man in his mid-40s, a former factory worker. He did not believe in spirits. He did not attend church regularly. When villagers warned him about the screams, he laughed and blamed stray dogs. For the first week, nothing happened. The corridors were cold but empty. The metal bed frames had been removed, leaving only rust stains on the floors. Mattresses lay torn open in the courtyard. The basement smelled of mold and disinfectant. Then, on the 9th night, Mihai heard something. He later described it in a statement given to the local police in March of 1991. He was sitting near a small electric heater in the main hall when he heard a single knock from the second floor. Not loud, not violent, just 3 slow taps against wood. He assumed a window shutter had come loose. The second set of knocks came from the opposite end of the corridor. Mihai stood up. The building had no electricity upstairs. He climbed the stairwell with a flashlight. Dust moved in the beam of light like drifting ash. The second-floor hallway was narrow and lined with doors. Most rooms were empty. Some still held small wooden cribs stacked against the walls. He checked the first room. Nothing. The second room. Nothing. The third door was closed. He was certain he had left all doors open earlier that evening. When he pushed it open, he found the room empty except for a single metal bed frame bolted to the floor. The mattress was gone. The walls were bare, but the air felt different. He described it as heavy. As he stepped inside, he heard breathing. Not his own. Slow, shallow, childlike. He swung the flashlight toward the corner of the room. Nothing. The breathing stopped. Mihai left immediately. He locked the building that night and did not return until morning. The following week, villagers reported seeing lights flicker in the upper windows. Mihai insisted he had not turned anything on. There was no functioning electricity. Then the screams began. According to 3 separate witness accounts taken in April 1991, the sounds occurred shortly after midnight. They lasted between 15 and 20 seconds. They were high-pitched and layered, as if several voices cried at once. One woman, Elena Radu, lived less than 500 meters from the orphanage. She testified that on February 3rd, she heard a scream so intense it caused her to drop a glass in her kitchen. She described it as a child calling for its mother, but from underwater. The mayor dismissed the reports as hysteria. The country was unstable. Rumors spread easily. People were still processing the horrors they had learned about the orphanage's past. But Mihai stopped sleeping. He began hearing footsteps during the day. Soft padding across the upper floor. The sound of something being dragged across concrete. On February 17th, he made a second police report. He claimed that while inspecting the basement storage room, he found small handprints on the inside of the locked metal door. The prints were smudged, as if made with dirt or ash. They were positioned low, at the height of a toddler. The police inspected the area. They found no intruders. The handprints were gone by morning. 2 days later, Mihai resigned. He left the village entirely. The orphanage stood empty. But the screams did not stop. In early March 1991, a volunteer medical team from France visited Cighid as part of a humanitarian review. They had heard about the facility's history and wanted to document remaining conditions. One of the volunteers, Dr. Alain Mercier, later wrote in his private journal that he experienced something unusual while examining the abandoned rooms. According to his entry dated March 12th, "The silence here is unnatural. The walls feel saturated with suffering. When I stood alone in what used to be the isolation ward, I heard what I believed to be whispering. It was not wind. It formed no clear words, but it carried intent." Dr. Mercier did not report this publicly. The journal was discovered years later among his archived papers. By mid-March, the local Orthodox parish priest, Father Andrei Iliescu, was asked informally to bless the building. He had been serving in the region for over 20 years. Known for his calm temperament, he rarely entertained talk of hauntings. Still, he agreed. According to church records from the Diocese of Oradea, Father Andrei entered the orphanage on March 21, 1991, accompanied by 2 deacons and the mayor. They carried holy water and liturgical books. The blessing began in the main hallway. Witnesses present later described a sudden drop in temperature as they ascended the staircase. One deacon reported feeling pressure in his ears, as if descending underwater. Father Andrei read prayers for the departed. When he reached the former isolation room on the 2nd floor, the same room Mihai had described, his voice faltered. He later stated that the air in the room felt oppressive, resistant. As he sprinkled holy water on the walls, a sharp cracking sound echoed from the ceiling above. Dust fell in thin streams. Then came the scream. All 4 men heard it. It was not distant. It erupted from inside the room. The mayor ran into the corridor. One deacon dropped the censer. Father Andrei stood still, gripping the cross around his neck. The scream lasted longer this time, nearly 30 seconds. It shifted in tone, beginning high and childlike, then deepening into something strained and broken. When it stopped, the building returned to silence. The blessing was not completed. Father Andrei requested that the building remain closed for several months. Nothing further was reported. Until the summer of 1991, when a family moved into a house directly across from the orphanage. They were the Ionescu family. Husband, wife, and a 6-year-old daughter named Anna. Anna began waking at night. At first, she complained of bad dreams. She said she heard children crying outside her window. She said they asked her to come play. Her parents dismissed it as imagination. But within weeks, her behavior changed. She became withdrawn. She stopped speaking at school. She began drawing pictures in black crayon, long corridors with small figures standing at the end. One drawing disturbed her teacher deeply. It showed a room with a single bed bolted to the floor. In the corner, several stick-like figures stood clustered together. Above them, Anna had written one word in uneven letters: cold. Her mother, Maria Ionescu, later stated that Anna had never been inside the orphanage. One night in August, Maria awoke to find Anna standing in the hallway, facing the direction of the abandoned building. Anna was whispering. When Maria approached, she heard her daughter repeating the same phrase over and over. "They're still inside." Maria carried her back to bed. The following evening, Anna developed a fever without cause. Doctors found no infection. Her temperature rose and fell unpredictably. Then came the voice. According to both parents, Anna began speaking in a tone that was not her own. It occurred during the early hours before dawn. Her body remained still, eyes closed, but her mouth moved. The voice was hoarse and layered. It spoke in Romanian, but the phrasing was archaic. "They locked us below," it said. Maria attempted to wake her. Anna did not respond. The voice continued, "Do not leave us in the dark." When Anna opened her eyes, she appeared confused. She remembered nothing. The episodes increased in frequency. Furniture in her room shifted slightly overnight. Her toys were found arranged in straight lines pointing toward the orphanage. The local physician referred the family to a psychiatrist in Oradea. The psychiatrist diagnosed trauma-related sleep disorder. He suggested that media coverage about the orphanage may have influenced the child subconsciously. But Anna had not been exposed to television reports. The family did not own a television set. In late September, Father Andrei was called to the Ionescu home. He arrived quietly, carrying only a small prayer book. He observed Anna for several minutes as she sat at the kitchen table drawing. Without looking up, she spoke. "You came back." The priest did not answer immediately. Anna's pencil snapped in her hand. "They do not like you." Maria later said that the temperature in the kitchen dropped so suddenly that her breath became visible. Father Andrei began reciting prayer softly. Anna's head tilted at an unnatural angle. When she looked at him, her eyes appeared unfocused. Then she began to hum. It was a low, rhythmic sound, almost like a lullaby. The melody was unfamiliar to her parents, but Father Andrei recognized it. He had heard the same tune months earlier while walking alone past the orphanage gates at dusk. At that time, he had dismissed it as wind passing through broken windows. Now it was coming from a 6-year-old child sitting in a brightly lit kitchen. The humming grew louder. The windows rattled slightly. Anna's voice shifted again. "Father," it said slowly, "you left us there." The priest felt a sharp pressure behind his eyes. He later wrote in his private notes. There was intelligence in the voice. Not rage. Not chaos. Something wounded. Something waiting. He made the decision to investigate the orphanage once more. This time, not for a blessing, but for something else. And as October approached, the nights around Cighid grew colder. The screams returned, stronger than before. The first frost of October settled over Cighid like a thin layer of ash. Father Andrei returned to the orphanage alone. He did not inform the mayor. He did not bring deacons. According to a handwritten entry found in the parish archive, he believed that whatever lingered there was bound to unfinished suffering. He carried only a lantern, a small wooden cross, holy water, and a worn copy of the Psalter. The gate resisted when he pushed it open. Rust flaked onto his hands. The courtyard weeds had grown high, brushing against his coat as he crossed toward the entrance. The door hung slightly ajar. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The silence was complete. He began on the ground floor, walking slowly, whispering prayers for the dead. The beam of his lantern moved across cracked tiles and stained walls. In one former dormitory, he found something that had not been there in March. A small shoe. Child-sized, blue fabric, torn at the sole. It was placed in the center of the room. He bent down to examine it. The leather was brittle with age, but it was not dusty. It looked recently disturbed. According to county inventory lists, all personal items had been removed the previous year. He left the shoe where it lay. Upstairs, the corridor seemed narrower than before. The isolation room door stood open. He stepped inside. The temperature dropped sharply. His breath became visible. The metal bed frame remained bolted to the floor, exactly as Mihai had described months earlier. Father Andrei placed the lantern on the floor and began reciting the prayer for departed souls who died without comfort. As he spoke, a faint vibration moved through the walls. It felt less like sound and more like pressure. Then he heard it. Not a scream this time, but a low, collective murmur. It seemed to rise from beneath the floor. The priest knelt. He pressed his palm against the concrete. It was trembling. He stopped praying and listened. The murmur formed fragments of words. Cold. Hungry. Dark. His throat tightened. The basement. He stood and moved quickly toward the stairwell at the end of the corridor. The metal steps creaked under his weight. The smell of mold thickened as he descended. At the bottom was a reinforced storage room once used for medical supplies. The door was closed. He remembered Mihai's report of handprints. The priest touched the metal surface. It was ice cold. He placed the cross against it and whispered a short invocation. The moment the words left his mouth, a violent impact struck from the other side. The door shuddered inward. A second blow followed. Then silence. Father Andrei did not retreat. He unlocked the door. The room beyond was empty. Concrete walls. Rusted shelves. a drain in the center of the floor. But the air inside felt suffocating. He stepped in cautiously. The lantern flame flickered violently, though there was no wind. Then he saw it. On the far wall, faint markings scratched into the concrete. Vertical lines. Dozens of them. Some short, some long. Tally marks. He counted slowly. There were over 200. His breathing grew shallow. Church records from the 1980s confirmed that severely disabled children had been kept in basement isolation during outbreaks of disease. Many were undocumented. Some deaths were never officially recorded. Father André closed his eyes. He understood now. What lingered here was not a single presence. It was accumulation, a residue of neglect and fear. But as he turned to leave, something changed. The lantern extinguished instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. In that darkness, he heard a single child's voice, distinct from the others. Clear. Close to his ear. "You hear us now." The priest did not respond with panic. Instead, he began reciting the Lord's Prayer from memory. Halfway through, the pressure in the room intensified. His ears rang sharply. The floor beneath him vibrated. The collective murmur rose again, no longer fragmented. It formed a unified cry. The sound was neither fully human nor entirely distorted. It carried grief. The priest raised his voice, finishing the prayer firmly. Then he added words not found in any formal liturgy. "If you are forgotten here, you are not forgotten now." The vibration slowed. The murmur softened. For a brief moment, there was stillness. Then came a different sound. Footsteps on the basement stairs. Slow. Measured. Not the scattered shuffling he had heard before. These steps were deliberate. Descending toward him. Father André turned toward the stairwell, though he could see nothing. The footsteps stopped halfway down. A long pause followed. Then the child's voice returned. But it was no longer wounded. It was curious. "She hears us too." The priest understood immediately. "Anna." He left the basement without hesitation. When he emerged outside, night had fallen completely. The village lights flickered faintly in the distance. Across the field, he saw a small figure standing near the road, barefoot. Still. Even from that distance, he recognized her silhouette. "Anna." He hurried toward her. As he approached, he noticed her parents were not present. She stood facing the orphanage, head tilted slightly. When he reached her, she spoke without turning around. "They're quieter now." Her voice sounded like her own. The priest knelt beside her. "You must not come here at night." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were clear, but heavy. "They say you opened the door." A chill passed through him. He had opened the basement door. Whether physically or spiritually, he did not know. He escorted Anna home. Her parents were frantic. They had discovered her bedroom window open. She had left silently. Maria wept as she embraced her daughter. Father André instructed the family to keep all windows secured and to remove any objects in Anna's room that pointed toward the orphanage. That night, he remained in their home. Shortly after midnight, Anna's breathing changed. Her body stiffened. Her eyes opened slowly, though she appeared not to see the room around her. When she spoke, multiple tones overlapped within her voice. "We are not alone." The priest began formal prayers of exorcism authorized within the Romanian Orthodox tradition. As he recited, Anna's small hands clenched tightly. The temperature in the room dropped again. A loud crack echoed from the direction of the orphanage. Everyone heard it. The sound of breaking concrete. Anna gasped sharply. "They're coming up," the layered voice whispered. Father André continued without pause. He sprinkled holy water across the room. Anna's body arched briefly, then fell still. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then her breathing returned to normal. When she blinked, confusion filled her face. She asked why her parents were crying. At dawn, a group of villagers gathered near the orphanage after hearing noises during the night. What they found was reported in a short local bulletin. Part of the basement ceiling had collapsed inward. No one was inside. But in the debris, exposed beneath broken concrete, were small bones. Child-sized. Authorities arrived from Oradea. An official investigation began. Excavation revealed a narrow chamber beneath the storage room floor, sealed decades earlier. Inside were the remains of multiple children, unregistered, unmarked. The discovery shocked the region. National newspapers reported on the find in November 1991. It became another symbol of the cruelty hidden during the previous regime. But what was not published were the accounts from the night before the collapse. Villagers stated that just before midnight, the screams had changed. They no longer sounded desperate. They sounded distant, fading. Anna's episodes ceased entirely after the bodies were recovered and given proper burial rites conducted by Father Andre. The priest later wrote in his final entry regarding the case, "Suffering leaves an imprint. When denied voice, it seeks one." The child became the echo. Once the hidden were brought to light, the echo was no longer necessary. The orphanage was demolished in 1993. A small memorial now stands in its place. Travelers who pass through Cighid rarely know what once stood there. But some residents claim that on certain winter nights, when frost covers the fields and the air becomes perfectly still, a faint sound can be heard from the empty ground. Not a scream, not a cry, just the distant hum of a lullaby carried briefly on the wind. And then nothing at all.